All right. Well, let's start talking about something real interesting, like this last 75 pages that was a little
Dark.
interesting, but sometimes hard to read. Yes. Yes. So give us some darkness, Chris.
No, I like to bring the light. This, yeah, no, that was. I really enjoyed, like I started mentioning last week. Really enjoyed the Bernie Madoff stuff because, like, I'd heard that story or whatever, and as just all the red flags and just the terror that the whistleblower was in, thinking he was, just all the psychological, how he was messed up, knowing he's like, hey, I'm calling all this, but are they going to come after me? Are they like, I got to get a security system, I got to get a gun, I got to get all this other stuff, because it literally could be bringing down the people he's like, that was nuts. That's the part where I was just like, I was totally enamored by that part. Then yeah, it got into the Nasser and the all that. I was just kind of like, oh gosh, let's get to the next section of it. But no, I was blown away by the inability for people to either recognize the signals, like with that Nasser one, the mother who was a doctor who was in the room with her daughter and is coming up with excuses to herself, like, oh yeah, that'd be so embarrassing to be that guy right now, not having any idea how big of a monster it is sitting right next to her with her daughter. And it's just our ability as humans to deduct stuff, I've realized, is just awful. Like, just to look at some of the blatant red flags that are in front of us, and how often when, like, say, trust your gut. Well, that's a good thing, but it can also, as we've seen here, be like, I just don't know what to believe anymore. Like this, poof, like, I don't know. But it has been. I'm blown away by the book because I find it fascinating. It is hard to put down compared to some of the others that we have gone through, and I've really enjoyed the reading of this one. So how's that for the dark light?
I wanted to find out where your committed significant other was. I've just noticed she's missed 2 weeks in a row. I just wondered how your bike
I've called her on this
have you
one.
have you slipped off the Peloton or the bike with her, or what happened?
Still every
Okay.
single day. I told you, spandex running 5 days a week. Like, it's still there every day. So
do I need to send her a text?
Please do right now. Yes, her mom is on here now. We were able to get, so Trisha, as you can see in there, we've got her to join us. She was telling her about it. So this is her first one. She was able to jump on board.
I don't think I have Crystal's number.
So it's,
let me give it to me.
Hold on a second. Let me just do this really quick.
You want to just share a contact with me?
Yeah, here you go. And give her a hard time for me, please, right now. But yeah, no, that was I'll give her credit. She is doing the reading, but yeah, like I said, this has been a very
welcome,
fun.
Crystal's mom. I'm really, really happy to have you on here.
That's what I was just going to say. Welcome. And just as your daughter is getting called out by at least 3% of everybody in the book club here.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
We're happy to have you. So I'll just elaborate a little bit. Like, it's funny how this, like, I notice how it falls on me when I'm reading it. And then after I get done reading it, it doesn't leave me. I start to kind of think about it and try to analyze it. And then I try to analyze situations that I've been in where I've been blind, or I've trusted, or I didn't trust my gut and I knew it. And then it always ended up working out where you're like, I knew it. Like you kind of knew it, like the whole time there were these signs. But I think it's because we're innately trusting. And I think about this with my 5-week-old, right? Like, she just looks at me and she just trusts me, right? That I'm going to take care of her. I'm going to feed her. I'm going to bathe her. I'm going to, like, do everything right by her from this, 5 weeks on. And when she's 3 months old, my daughter that's 3 years old, she trusts me, right? I'm not going to do anything to hurt her. And I think we grow into that. And I will tell you, I was talking to Greg about this. I really don't trust anybody. And when I have, I've kind of been let down. which is kind of crazy thing. But I'm the guy that turned in Bernie Madoff. I'm the guy that's always, someone's working on my house, I'm wondering who's trying to take advantage of me, and are they doing the job right? And I'm standing over them, I'm looking at them, you know. So it's a tough place to be in. And there's some people like you, Chris. I could see you as just being this trusting, blind faith person, right? Like there's just no way that this doctor that works with, you know, Olympic gymnasts, like this is the process you go through your head. Like there's no way that he is working with Olympic gymnasts, the elite of the elite of the elite, and he would possibly be doing that. Like because he has a status that you trust, right? And then the guy, forget the guy's name, Penn State,
Sandusky. Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
you know,
I
mean, as I'm reading that, and then they're like, he's had, you know, hundreds of foster kids.
Just a model citizen.
It didn't even elaborate on that, but like, that was his, like, in my head now, I'm like, well, you know, what was he doing in his own home if he was doing this in a gym locker room, if he was, but I mean, again, it's what people portray, and sometimes we just don't go below the surface. And I feel like even the president of Penn State, you know, like looking back on it, like he just thought there's no way, this guy's been here 30 years. There's just no way that he would have done this. And that's where we go to, because we want to think the best of humans. And, you know, even when people really mess up, and our family's the worst that messes up with it sometimes, we always usually forgive and let it go. You know, so it's just who we are. Like, you know, if something happens in the media, you hate them, and then it goes away and they're not in the media anymore, and all of a sudden they're back, and you look at them differently 2 years later, and it's like, it's still the a-hole that did what he did 2 years ago. Like, he's still the same person, but for some reason we have this forgiveness mechanism inside of us, and we think the best of every single person that we come in contact with. And I think that's what the author is trying to show us, is that, I mean, not to not trust people, but maybe just pay attention to some of the things that happen around you sometimes, and maybe ask more questions, because that mother should have asked questions, right? Like, I mean, and it's crazy. I mean, the father was in the room, the mother's in the room, and he's no gloves, kind of hiding, like, you know, molesting these girls, and the parents didn't even suspect it, like denied it. They were there. And, you know, it's very interesting. Like, and it's really, like Greg and I were saying, like, this part of the book for me, like having daughters, is a really, really tough read for me, because the only thing that I'm thinking when he's giving some of these descriptive details is that I would have killed him.
But you're armed with hindsight too, and that's the crazy part about all this. Like, obviously, it's so easy, and that's what we all say with us.
Oh no, I'm saying I would have been in the courtroom, and I would have killed him.
Oh,
like,
right. No,
they would have.
It's just like, these details are absolutely horrid, and it's like the same thing. You can go with Hitler or any of that stuff from earlier in the book. Like, okay, yeah, they should have taken him out earlier, and look at all the stuff it would have saved. It's like, with hindsight, yes, it's super obvious, all these things, and that's just what's sad. Like, how can we become more aware in the moment? Is, I think, what I'm really hoping he provides some insight towards the end of this, and gets it, because that's what I'm really excited to see, is like, how do you get better at not only talking to strangers but trusting strangers? Like, that's what I hope this is going.
Go ahead, Brooke.
Well, I kind of, around this whole section of the book, I feel like this is definitely like an us thing in a lot of cases. You know, looking back, you're like, oh, all the red flags were there. How did they not realize when you reanalyze the situation? Like, oh, of course that's off. But I think, like, I am the trusting person. As I've grown older, I've realized that you trust people with bits of information, and when they prove you right, you trust them a little more, you know. But I never go into a situation with, you know, walls up and stuff like that. I'm just, you know, take people as they are, and then I'll figure it out as we go along, how much more I can give them and how much deeper our relationship can be, and those sort of things. But I think as a people, even though social media says otherwise, in a herd or in a group, from behind a computer screen, we're very vocal. We're very, you know, like, into conflict and drama and things like that. But I think in real life, when, you know, that screen's taken away from you and you're standing there face to face to somebody, we are very conflict averse as a people. And I think that's what it is. It's an uncomfortable place that even though, you know, your gut says otherwise, or the Holy Spirit, or whatever you call it, like that thing in you that says something's off here, but you rationalize it because that would mean some sort of conflict. That would mean you'd have to say something. That'd mean you'd have to go to a deeper or a darker place than you are comfortable being, because that gives you the feels and you might have to do something about it. That's a real scary place for people, because there's a responsibility in that. And I think that is ultimately the problem. It's our not wanting to take the responsibility if we find what we really feel like might be there.
I think
So-
it's easy. I'm sorry, Greg, me to
No,
step
go
on you.
for it, David.
I think one of the things that I had a tendency to do, and I'll get to a personal story of mine in a second, but we want to apply our own beliefs and ethics and morals to the people that are across the table from us. We don't know where they came from, how they grew up, how they came to those determinations and values. And somehow when we see a situation, we rationalize it because I would never do that. That's the way I never thought. That's not the way I would act. But you can't, you're not in that other person's shoes. So you really don't know whether or not these things that are giving you this bad gut instinct are really there. So we take our own mindset and we translate that to the other person. And I'll tell you the story. Before I came to work at Provest, I was partnered with two other agents, and we had a pretty large agency. And all the signs were there that this one of the guys had a serious drug and alcohol problem. But we ignored them. We just ignored it. And we went about our business. There were days that he was late. There were days he didn't show up for meetings. He would come in and he'd crash in his office and sleep. And he'd say he had a long night and all this kind of stuff. And he did have kids, and there were things to explain it away. And we allowed him to explain it away rather than dig deeper. I look at it as a failure on my part to not dig deeper, because we probably could have helped him out. We probably could have intervened and maybe gotten him some help for his alcoholism and his drug abuse. And maybe we could have, I don't know if I could have saved the partnership, but I might have been able to help him and then move on and be able to close that door and have it, the finality of that door being closed, knowing that I did everything that I should have done and I could have done. But I just shushed it all away. And it wasn't until somebody came in, a new person came in from the outside and took a look at it and said, this guy's got a serious problem. And then we had a Christmas party and everything fell apart with that. It was revealed to everybody, his problems, because he showed up late and he was stoned and drunk. But reading this book brings all this stuff flooding back to me. So I look at all the relationships I've got now and the people that I deal with, and I'm wondering, who has a different mindset than me, trust levels, acceptance levels, who I'm going to let into my circle, both professionally and personally. And it's hard to be able to know exactly what that other person is thinking, how they act, and how they live their life. I think the best thing you can do is just ask questions. Question things when they come up. Don't take them for what you appear to be face value. Dig a little deeper. Because to this day, I still regret not being able to help that guy. And I walked away from it mad and upset, and I could have maybe made a difference. I don't know. But his life changed, and I closed that door and never looked back. And like I say, all the telltale signs were there, and I just kind of, brushed it off and ignored it till it got to that peak where it was a crisis. So
the thought that I had, we're talking about how could we not know, and how could it be in front of us and we not respond to it? What Brooke said a minute ago kind of triggered a thought, and that is that what this reminds me of, or reminds me that is the case, that there is evil. There are people who have the ability to operate at such a high level of sociopathy or psychopathy or whatever it's called, just pure total sociopaths and psychopaths that have because those kind of people are probably the most skilled at deceiving people. I mean, we don't have, I don't know if there's going to be a chapter in here on serial murders, but Ted Bundy was that way. John Wayne Gacy was a clown, for crying out loud, that people hired on a regular basis. So these people exist is one of the things that I take from this. It doesn't make me paranoid of everyone, but it does remind me that these people do exist. And every generation that they walk among us in every generation. Now there may be different levels, but when Nassar and Sandusky, and I mean, you can't, there's not much closer to the line of evil than you can get to that, as I'm editorializing from my point of view. So I think it's hard for us to conceive that kind of person even exists. And because it's hard to believe that someone even exists that way, and this is not, this is layers away from where you were, David, with your business partner. But I think it couldn't be that way. It just, not this guy. Like every time somebody does something weird in the neighborhood and kills 12 people, what do all the neighbors say? Oh, he's a nice guy. Watch the kids every day. It's just, there are never any clues. So it makes you, it kind of makes, it puts me on alert, but it doesn't, I can't walk around distrusting everybody, because that doesn't work. The other thing though, when we're talking about the parents who were there and all this other kind of stuff, and I think I mentioned this last week, I think some of it is, if I embrace that I actually knew that, not just what does it say about them, but what does it say about me? Like, will I be judged because I was the parent in the room? Like the woman that was the physician and all this other kind of stuff was one of the, she fought this narrative tooth and nail, because otherwise she was there. And the whole world has to know that this, a scientist in the same profession that's well-trained with her own kid was there. So what will that say about me if I just throw in the towel too quickly and say it looked wrong? Because now all of a sudden it looks like I don't have any radar for my own children, or I don't have any radar for, for what's going on with these folks. Because not that you should, there's no ownership. This guy was evil, but how do I disassociate myself from that? I don't know, I'm rambling a little bit, but I just think there's an issue with how much distance I can put. And you know what? And if I fund, and by the way, I know people that have been in, like, it's not professional gymnastics, but it really is professional gymnastics. These people pour a ton of money into this stuff. They are invested not just in terms of time, but in terms of resources. So all of a sudden, you mean I was bankrolling, the U.S. Olympics Committee with Larry Nassar or whatever his name was, abusing these kids? I paid him to be there, is what some people probably were thinking. And that's a long road to travel if you think about. So I think there's a lot going on. I would also say, Jay, the guy that in the Madoff story, I think Chris was talking about that, the guy that, it's weird because we all know this guy that we feel like trusts absolutely no one. And we're like, dude, stop saying everybody is out to get us. Everybody's not out to get us. Well, you know what? Sometimes they are out to get us, and they are out to do wrong. So it makes me a little bit more empathetic towards someone who rings bells sometimes. Maybe they're not always crying wolf. Maybe they actually have something going on.
Well, Greg, you gave me the perfect segue into what I was going to bring up, because everybody has brought up valid points, right? But I think one of the biggest reasons why our radar is off is because nobody wants to be the holy fool. Nobody wants to be that guy. And a lot of our perceptions and that willingness to turn a blind eye, or to sweep stuff under the rug, or to act like it's not happening, is because we don't want to lose our place among our social circles and in our societies, and whether it's a job or at your church, or anywhere that you fit into that group, and that sense of that need to belong to other people. You don't want to be the person that goes against the grain. And a lot of times, even though the red flags are like flaming, right, on fire, like Moses burning bush in front of us, will still put other things, well, they have a great job, or he's good looking, or she has a really nice smile, or she drives a really nice car. All of these things that we'll put there to justify why this person just absolutely could not be doing those things that we think they're doing. And it's very telling of our own biases. And I think I said this last week, bias is not just based on color, even though that's been kind of the thing now, right? But it's not just based on color. It's how you view somebody and their standing based on the outer things that you can see without knowing anything about the person on the inside. And so you can see somebody who has on a full Chanel outfit, and they're wearing the finest fragrance, and they're driving a really good car, and you're thinking, oh, they're wonderful, they're wealthy, they have this, they have that, and you're less likely to believe that they're capable of something rotten as the person who comes up with face tats and piercings, or dreadlocks, or saggy pants or something like that. How many times do those people get misjudged or suspicious? People are suspicious of what they're doing and where they've been and where they come from, but you don't question somebody like Bernie Madoff, right? Because he's giving you the appearance that I know what I'm talking about. I'm successful. He has offices in Midtown Manhattan. He's arrived. He's where everybody else wants to be. So nobody wants to think that this dude is bilking them the whole time. Like nobody. And then when you do see it, nobody wants to admit it. It's like the emperor's new clothes. Like nobody wants to say it out loud that I'm the one that, oh, wow. Yeah, this guy's no good or whatever, because now you're worried about how people are going to judge you and how it's going to make you look for either saying something or even associating with this person. So some people try to act like they never knew you at all, right? And like, I don't want anybody to know I had anything to do with that. Or you don't want to be the only person. If you think you can rally some folks around you, then folks will come out and, hey, let's stone this guy to death, right? But nobody wants to be that lone person to do it.
It's very true. I think this book is fascinating. And in a way, yes, you can put it down. I did have to put it down at one point, especially when they were talking about the gymnast case and the boy in the shower. And the moment I started reading that section, the boy in the shower, I have to admit, I became judgy, and I said, oh my God, how can they think that's okay? Like, who in their right mind would think it's okay for a man to be taking a shower with a minor? And then as I read more, and then I understood, and they're saying like, no, it's not a crime to believe, to not believe the truth. And I said, and it's similar to what you guys were saying, this person, like, how can this person do evil things like that? And it kind of made me also question, and I got a little bit paranoid, because then I started saying, oh, who's around my kids? Who's been around my kids in the past, well, when they were going to school, right now they're homeschooled. But when they were going to school, like, I have a 9-year-old boy. He does tutoring, so school, tutoring, after school, swim classes, basketball. So I'm glad I'm reading it, because it's giving me more of an alert. Like, I'm more alert of things, like, okay, I'm more aware. And from now on, I even have to be even more aware, because I choose to believe like I am telling him all the right things to know in advance something's wrong. And for him to feel like confident enough to come to me and say, mommy, somebody did something. Or not even put him in a situation like that. But it's kind of like opened my eyes even a little more, because if I was not trusting before, I feel like I'm even worse now. So I just have to find a balance. I don't want to scare him into the world. I do tell him to the point where he's just like, I know, mommy, you told me already. But it's like, as a parent, you cannot help but put yourself in that situation and be like, if I was in that place, would I've been trusting? Would I've been that naive and letting things go like that? And it's really fascinating to be reading this and just more of like aware, more even now than before.
Yeah, I agree. And to Rochelle's point, what I've taken from the past 75 pages is that stereotypes can do more harm than good. They're not always a guarantee, and just to work on not stereotyping individuals by the way they look, the way they hold themselves, because that information can be very misleading.
And I think that stereotype goes both ways.
Absolutely.
You know, somebody that's in a position of power that, you know, is coaching for 30 years and had success, and or, you know, the other stereotype. So again, making false assumptions towards either what we think is a good stereotype or what we classify as something that, you know, no one could ever do that. CIA agent, you know, I mean, for the United States government, like, and then down to, you know, what people classify as white trash, or, you know, uneducated, or, you know, whatever people put people in these classes of, like, that doesn't make them.
Talking about me again, Jay.
What's that?
You're talking about me again.
Stan, I did not know you were on here. I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
Sorry.
okay.
I apologize.
Well, that's why the machine was more accurate than people, because the machine doesn't have any
Emotion.
of those emotions. The machine doesn't want to belong in any set group. The machine is not worried about who's going to be upset. The computer's not worried about any of the things that we look at. And Jay, that was exactly my point, the good or the bad stereotypes. A stereotype is just not good either way, because you're making assumptions based on really nothing. You know, nothing that's really valid or anything like that. And that was precisely my point. Jerry Sandusky, nobody would have thought that he would have done some such things. Bill Cosby was America's favorite dad. Nobody thought he was capable of doing those things, right? When I first heard that, I'm like, Bill Cosby, like, first of all, he's not even sexy, right? And but at the same, you know, because he's like daddish, right? Like, you're not thinking of Bill Cosby trying to get busy with women or something like that, you know what I mean? And so it took so long for that to even register, that he was capable of doing some things. And some people fought against that tooth and nail until he finally admitted in court himself that, yes, I did this. And people's minds were blown, because you're thinking Dr. Bill Cosby, educator, he's put out educational cartoons and TV shows and all of this stuff, and he's donated to all of these millions and millions of dollars to charities.
He's a Jello pudding man, like
Exactly,
pudding, man.
and Coke
Come
is
on.
it. Yeah, like, come on now. Like, you know, he was like advertising everything when I was growing up, and the spokesman for everything. So, you know, it was, but you can't just judge a person just off of all of those things, just like you shouldn't judge a person off of maybe a wrong thing they've done or a wrong decision they've made, or, you know, look at our buddy Steve Jobs. You know what I mean? Like, if you looked at him from the surface and he's stinky and unkempt, who would have known that he was like a marketing genius, right? What if you just wrote him off? What if he wasn't in that particular circle and didn't grow up in Silicon Valley and he grew up in the Bronx? Would people have looked at him the same way? I doubt it.
Yeah, if I could just jump in here for a second. The thing that kind of at a macro level, the thing that is so fascinating to me on this book is that I was talking to my parents last night and I was trying to describe it. I think it's like the first book I'm ever actually ahead. I am a little bit ahead. And so I was trying to say, well, it's about it's about kind of like appearances and how you can transparency, and if you can really judge a book by, well, no, no, it's not. As it evolves, I think that's what makes it so fascinating. Is it certainly does talk about biases and, you know, from an appearance and traffic stop and that sort of thing. And then it goes into trained, you know, CIA spies whose entire job is for 20 plus years is to be able to not look at appearances, but assess somebody's reaction to very controlled circumstances and questions, and how even that is wrong. Like whatever the study was, the trained professionals did just as bad, if not worse, as the public in determining who was stealing or who cheated and who didn't. And then as it's evolved, you know, now it's getting into differences in, for example, culturally, when different people have, you know, alcohol as an example, that, it brings out a certain personality. Well, no, not in this specific group. And in this Central American country, this is this is what it's used as, and this is the reaction it brings about. So I just found it fascinating that I tried to come up with a conclusion. I'm like, well, so his point is, and where this is going is, actually, I have no idea. I have no idea how this is all going to tie together. But I thought one of the simplest kind of things that we think about, and we kind of, at least me, I'll be critical if I judge somebody wrong. I'm like, oh man, I blew that. I thought this person was again, if you go to hiring or a friend in your life, I thought this person wasn't, X, and they wound up being a Z because of X. How did I not see that? And the example he used of friends, and hey, this is how a lot of people expect surprise to look: eyebrows raised, mouth open. This is how anger or being ashamed is supposed to look. And it's almost like the sitcomification of how we expect people to react. If we just start in this country, let alone when you get outside. And then the examples of, well, this is how this certain island, that's how they express surprise. And how, if you just start thinking down as where he's taking us, what, not just in the legal system, but in relationships and in how many times we make a snap judgment. And again, we're so far beyond appearances here, when into like the deep core of, well, wait, this is what anger looks like. This is what someone feeling bad about what they did looks like. This is what being guilty. And he's kind of turned it all on its head. So I guess all that said, I'm really fascinated as we get deeper into this and the different examples he's pulling out of sexual assault on campus and consent and all these different things. What we assume to be true based on all his research actually isn't. And I'm really hoping, or I guess I'm very intrigued to see how he ties this all together.
So I want to say something about you, Darren, because Darren has passion in a lot of things that he talks about, but I will tell you where passion lies the most with Darren, and that's people. He is a people connector. He is a people communicator. So I think the passion that I'm sensing from you, Darren, is because this is giving you some insight to people that you probably don't know, that you study and feel like, does this person fit within this group of friends, and does this person fit? And you kind of, I've always been a puzzle master of connecting the right people with the right people. And I think this book is really speaking to you, because it is all about people, right? And connecting with people and reading people and understanding people. And so just to give you guys some something around Darren, that's what he is. That's what it's. All of his friends know him for that, except for the glass half full on that stage. Most of them didn't know about that, but most of his friends know that he's the people connector in our group, and very good at analyzing who fits with who. And I think for him, it's like, sometimes he's been wrong and sometimes he's right, but most of the time he's right.
See, I don't know that well, but I feel a kinship with the book, and I texted you and
Stan, we can't hear you that well. You're breaking up a little bit, I think.
Hang on.
Everybody's thinking, what is Stan doing right now that he leans over, that he will sound different when he leans back in?
Sounds like he's typing like, everybody get off the Wi-Fi.
I'm just really excited Stan's here.
Yeah, me too.
I really miss Stan.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
Is that better? Okay,
Yes.
Sorry about that. I was going batteried for a while. I feel a connection with Darren in that I texted Jay and Greg early on in this book, and I said, it's disturbing, and it's still disturbing. I don't know where we're supposed to be. I missed last week, but I finished the book already, and it's
okay. Don't give us any.
I'm not going to. I'm just simply going to say it's disturbing from the standpoint of there's all this chemistry going back and forth, how we think things should be. Part of it we can't control because of it's from our upbringing, our DNA, our background, and all these outside influences. And so we make these choices and these decisions about people, and we have no control over their background, their upbringing, and all of that. And it's fascinating and disturbing, because ultimately it kind of gives me the impression that, well, as good as we want to try and be, we're toast. we're absolutely toast. So it's kind of it's a mixed bag for me. I got to tell you, it's a good book.
So, the word stereotypes has come up a few times, and I think there's a reason that, even though I'm not sure that in fact, I am certain that it's not a good reason, but there's a reason we use them. We use them because there's some perception that they make our lives more efficient. So if I can look at Brooke and come to some determinations about her because I know, I see what age she is, I know where she lives, I know how many kids she has. So there's a grouping that I can put her in: young mother, professional. So I know about her. I know what's important to her. Even though I don't really, because that seems to move things along. I can it's like I can save. Imagine us actually taking the time to know, and what this would take, quite frankly, to actually get to know every single person that comes into your sphere. So, which is pretty much impossible. I mean, if you think about how many people all of us interact with on a day-to-day basis, because I mean, with people closer to us, maybe, yeah, but what about the person, that works the register at Walmart? I mean, how much time do we really want to get to know that person? I'm just in here to do this and leave. But when I see that person, I still have generalizations about them. I even have generalizations about why they work at Walmart and not at Neiman Marcus, which could be completely wrong. But my mind has space. I make more space in my head when I use stereotypes because I don't have to figure out so many things. And I guess to some degree they do serve us. I mean, stereotypes, someone who, as all of us at some point in time, have probably embraced what life is like around stereotypes. They come from somewhere. So people don't just pull this crap out of the air totally. I mean, there is some generalization that people come to, whether it's right or wrong, Stan, very often is wrong, but we do see something like, okay, that makes sense because the last 10 people that look like that did this. And so other people that look like that probably do this. And we don't do it. I don't think we always do it even with any malice. I think we just, it helps us. We're better when we can group things and not have to break everything down to its most infinite detail. But what this tells me, at least for the people that are close to me, and this is what I was getting from what Raquel was saying, is that in my circle, I might not be able to do that for everybody, but if my child spends more than an hour with you, I'm doing it for you. You and me are gonna sit down and I'm gonna get to know everything about you. I possibly, not every coach on the planet, but if you're on the swim team and you're a swim coach for my kid, before look, you and I are gonna go sit down and have a meal, maybe 2 meals, maybe 3 meals before I figure out whether you were gonna be anywhere near my child. And that would not be something I think about before. So I can totally understand where you're coming from with that, Raquel. And I think that's reasonable for the people that are close to our circle anyway.
I want to share that for me, I've read a couple other books from Malcolm. For me, he's one of the most intelligent people out there. And one of the things that I like is the fact that he has chosen, because it seems to me that pretty much all the intelligent people are always after technology and things like that. But this is one of the very intelligent people out there in the world that has chosen to go into social science and look at things that mostly we're blind about, or we don't want to see it, or we don't want to even think about it. And yet he's bringing the subject up for up to, we're seeing it here, for up to kind of like awake to that and say, hey, I didn't know that was going on. And then one of the things, and it's fascinating to eventually find out exactly how to understand that other person or that other culture or that And I guess this opens up a whole, I guess, universe. Eventually, others would follow and try to figure out how it works. Actually, there's a series, I don't remember the name of it, on I think it was Netflix or something like that, where there's a guy, a British guy, who set up a company because he's got the ability and I guess the science to figure out who's who, and so they're looking after criminals. And so he's very keen about observing every detail of how the person talks, how they move the eyes and the mouth and the body expression, everything. And so, okay, he's a guy that we need to go after, even though he looks like he's a nice guy. I think it's going to take years before we get, but one of the things I've learned, and then I guess maybe my upbringing, and then like everybody, I mean, many people here said, Chris and Stan and Greg, I mean, it's kind of hard because we don't understand exactly. We would have to understand not only the background where the person is coming from, but also how the person grew up to find out and what are their beliefs and in their, I guess, cultural system to find out. But I think I mean, yes, we can generalize certain things, other ones we can't, but I do throughout my travels, even here in the United States, I've noticed that there are certain things that pertain to certain groups of people or certain areas. For example, a couple of times I've been to Georgia, people are extremely polite, very polite. Whereas, for example, where I've gone to other parts of the country, they're not that polite. And then I wonder, because so that would help. That would help me, for example, find out like if somebody's from, let's say, Georgia. I would think that I guess I would be more open to receive that person than if I meet somebody, I don't know, maybe from New York City. Although I can't say that because every time I go they've been very nice to me, even though they're harsh. But I mean, it's fascinating, but I don't know. I guess also there might be a talent, and many have said, and I believe a lot about that, the gut feeling. In my particular case, I don't know, I have a gut feeling for politicians. Every time somebody's like running for presidency, either here in the United States or where I was born in Venezuela, I can spot if the guy is going to be a nice guy or not. I would say 9 out of 10, I know if it's going to be a good guy or not. And I can't tell you because I even tried to analyze myself. What is it that I'm looking at the guy that is telling me this or that? It's kind of like, I don't know, maybe Megan can tell us a little bit more. She's like she said to us, she's an empath, so she can I guess relate better with people and how they are, and kind of like check, or I don't know, receive like something about the whole energy of that person that could tell us if it's a good guy or not a good guy. But I mean, there's the horrible things they've done to the children, and then lately he hasn't touched on that subject. But for example, most of you might know about this, but the whole deal about the priests over the years that had molested kids, and then who would have thought a priest in the Catholic Church would have touched a kid? God, it's been horrible. And then I mean, I think there's still a lot of things going on. Some of them small ones, and we're not calling them out. We're not saying, hey, this guy is bad, we got to take him out. We don't. I've seen a lot of them in my own relationship in companies, and I can't believe that the high management sometimes look at certain people and they know what the guy's doing and they don't do anything about it. So yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting subject. I love the book. I gotta tell you, I really love the book.
So you guys can stay on here. I have a meeting at 1:45 that I have to get to, but I wanted to say, first of all, this is the reason I love this book club. And I'm going to tell you right now, because there's some takeaways that I got from all of you that for me helped me today kind of understand this. And the first one starts with Brooks, right? Because on the surface, most people don't address those issues because of what Brooks said. And it's true. People don't want conflict. They don't want conflict in their life. They don't want to create conflict, arguments, make anybody feel bad. And then I'm not sure if it was David or Rochelle, but also nobody in any kind of relationship wants to be wrong. Even if they think there might be something up, and if they don't know 100% for sure that this person is a CIA spy for Cuba, or they're a pedophile, or they're doing a Ponzi scheme, most people are not willing to put their name on the line and look bad if they're wrong. because then that destroys their reputation forever. And no one's going to listen to you again, right? So that's another reason why this goes by the wayside, right? So great takeaway from what you guys are saying, me reading between the lines, and it gave me chills. I'm like, you know what? A lot of this is that. Nobody wants to be wrong. Nobody wants conflict. And, you know, Greg says this thing, you know, and I thought about this, Rochelle, when you brought up Bill Cosby, that we don't like think about sometimes, but Greg's philosophy is if multiple people say it, it's probably true, right? Because when Cosby went put to prison, I was like, so what do you think about the Cosby thing? Because I'm not gonna lie, like I'm not like, did people gang up on him? Did he piss people off? Like, you know, like what do you actually think happened with Cosby? And he's like, all I'm gonna say is if that many people want to say he did it, he did it. It's that easy. Right. And I think sometimes, like even with Nassar, a lot of people were saying it. I mean, it wasn't just one person bringing it up. It was multiple people bringing it up. And we still are afraid to say something about it because what if we're wrong? I mean, think about a marriage. A marriage, a lot of times, the reason it's destroyed is because people want to be right and wrong. You're wrong, I'm right. Right. And being wrong is the worst thing in the world, right? Like having to apologize to someone saying, I was wrong, I made a mistake. Not many people do it, and most don't do it effectively when they do. And so the other takeaway I had in this book was what Darren talked about that maybe you guys haven't gotten to, and he's read ahead and talking about the head, but it's very interesting the different faces that people make, like even him talking about Friends and the episode, right? And my wife's an actress. And so, you know, whenever we watch a television show, she always like says like they're a good actor or a good actress. And I'm always interested, like, what makes you say that? Right? She's like, you know, it's just I could tell by like the way their facial expressions are and the way they express themselves. And until I read this book, I didn't understand exactly what she meant. But those actors or actresses, facial expression actually matches the emotion that they're supposed to hit in that very moment. Like when he saw his sister, I forget the character's name because I never watched the show, with Ross, I think it was, or Ross saw his sister. I'm not sure who the exact characters are, but when he saw that and when his face was through the door, he was able to act that out to where he said you could turn the volume down and know exactly what's happening. And that's the thing too, that, you know, what I thought about in this and this takeaway that Darren is saying is a lot of times just pay attention to their facial expression. Now, I don't know the AU12 and 7 and D and E and like all that scientific stuff that he, you know, talked about, that these instructors in college came up with these over 100 facial expressions that they can read somebody. But I think it's interesting a lot of times when you look into someone's eyes, you're like, they're not telling the truth. They're not being honest, but I don't know for sure. And I don't want to be wrong. And I don't want to cause conflict, because what if I'm wrong? And then I accuse him of something and he didn't do it and he's pissed at me and other people are going to be like, you didn't know what you're talking about. And I think that's a lot of the psychological stuff. And maybe he gets to it in the book. Only Stan can tell us because he's the only one I think here that finished the book and was going to do a spoiler. But I don't know. Like, but what I like about the book club, or what I like about today's meeting, is I got more out of today's meeting and understanding in the first 150 pages than I did on my own reading the book. So I thank you, Brooke, Rochelle, David, Chris, Merrick, Stan, like everyone that gave their input, kind of their take on it. Because I think you guys are on point with why we don't go forward and actually openly express what we really feel in our gut because we're afraid to be wrong.
Well, God bless the people that step up and put their reputations on the line, because without them, we wouldn't know. And by the way, Alex, you're talking about Georgia, how polite people are. Probably this will come up at some point in time, but there's a difference between being polite and being nice. Because they could say, oh, sweetie, you want some sweet tea? And then go back to the back. That boy is dumb as a rock. The same person. So even that is subject to.
Bless your heart.
In Alaska, we're nice.
There's dual meanings and everything. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So
I was watching a survey someone was doing, and they were talking about politeness and niceness, right? And how it varies in different areas. So to your point, Greg, in the South, yeah, someone will offer you something, they'll make conversation with you and stuff like that. In New York, they'll do a kind deed for you without ever saying a word to you. So like I used to get on the subway with my daughter in her baby carriage, right? So the subway, you have a lot of steps to walk down and stuff like that. I can't tell you how many times somebody will just walk up and grab the bottom end of the carriage and help me down the stairs. Never strike up a conversation, never say, hi, how you doing? Do you need help or anything like that? They just know you need to get down the stairs. So it's all about your perception of what polite and what nice is, right? Because most people say New Yorkers are mean, heartless, cold, emotionless. You see videos on social media of people doing all kinds of shenanigans on the subway and everybody's kind of like stone-faced, right? But if that same person, if somebody wasn't clowning around, but they were getting harmed, it would be different. About 5 or 6 people would jump up and try to help them. So it's all about, you know, what you perceive and how you define certain things may not always be the same. And so even when they got into the discussion about the facial expressions and they were doing the, I think it was the test with the videotape, and the girl who was like fidgety and nervous and stuff like that, everybody thought she was lying. And no, she was just antsy. She wasn't lying. You know, she was telling the truth. But then someone who's sitting there with the stone face and has the right look and has the right demeanor, everybody thought they were telling the truth. So that's what I was saying. A lot of it is our own filters that we put things through, and our own, like, it's not necessarily even the other person, the stranger, that's bad. Sometimes we need to question our own filters and why we base our judgments on certain things.
Yeah, and like Stan said, not because we got those filters from somewhere. I mean, they didn't just drop out of the sky. So pretty much all of these filters that we have, we were taught either directly or indirectly by the people that raised us, that we went to school with. You know, it's funny that, you know, I've gotten a chance to travel quite a bit, and we forget that there are a lot of people in this country that their entire lives, they never go more than 40 or 50 miles from where they were born. So, I mean, literally, that, you know, or live in the same town, you know, and never actually get even outside their own town, inside their own state. So everything they know came from that bubble. And that's what's really, a guy that I met in Iowa once told me, he was in Chicago, and I was like, well, how old were you when you went to Chicago? He's like, I was like 35. And I said, well, what took you to Chicago? He said, well, it really wasn't what took me to Chicago. He said, I was 35 before I understood I could leave. And he really wasn't joking, because it was grief for him. Why are you leaving this town? So where we learn everything. We do a lot of learning. And so we have to own what we've learned and then make choices about what we want to keep and what we want to discard as we get older. So
this is really quickly, this is reminding me, I used to teach recruiters how to do in-person interviews. And part of my training was this acronym called ODAC. It's observe, don't analyze, ask questions. Because the minute that you analyze, you're adding in your assumptions. By observing, you're taking in things that are true, that are real, that are happening. But when you start analyzing is when you put yourself into it and you put your brain into it too hard. And so then in order to get that truth, you have to ask those questions. So ODAC, guys.
I love it. That was awesome.
And on that note, I don't even know what to do with that as a transition. So ODAC y'all Wednesday. ODAC y'all next week.
Odios, everybody.
We'll be ODAC next week.
No, it's
I'll
over.
figure out how to use it in a sentence sometime in the next few days. I'm just saying. Bye.
Have a good week, all.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
Bye.